We got levels, we got camera, we got the light, the sun, and the moon is outside, and the disco ball.
The disco ball.
Disco ball.
Cristobal.
Baby, take a ride on my disco ball.
Disco ball.
Disco ball.
Disco ball.
Disco ball. Baby, take a ride on my disco ball.
Woo. That's the episode.
All right, folks. Welcome to Cinema Double Shot. I'm Wallace McKelvey, a journalist and filmmaker, and today I have Hal Kramer, who is a filmmaker, a comedian, an improv performer, and you may even recognize him, his beautiful face, from the Pennsylvania State Lottery, although I've been told that he does not represent the lottery tonight.
No, can't represent the lottery, but also the face of AES Hearth and Patio for those of you who've been watching HGTV.
Yes!
It's been 5 years since we shot that, and it's still going strong.
You did a commercial where you played like a daddy, grilling up some stuff in the backyard.
They paid me $500 for those commercials and no residuals, and it's everywhere. Like, damn it, should have demanded residuals.
What did you use the 500 for?
Paying off my credit card? I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably buying a piece of film equipment somewhere in the mix.
Yeah.
Like, that was probably around the time I got my Zoom.
The Zoom is, not to be too meta, is incredibly useful.
Mm-hmm.
I love working with my Zoom.
Yeah, if you want good audio, you really need an external Zoom or something like that. Which mine is not as sophisticated as this one, but...
Really?
Yeah, it's sort of a mini Zoom. I got it refurbished from Amazon, so it's smaller, but still records very good audio.
Yeah, like this thing I've used it for a lot of the River City story shoots, and it has come in handy. It's also really hardy. It has been dropped.
That is very important.
I probably shouldn't say that on YouTube in case I ever need to. Fuck it. It's been dropped a few times.
I'm sure people understand that you take, even if you take great care of your equipment, you're going to get dropped.
Yeah. Well, the one time on we were on Lisa's roof and it was starting to rain, and so the whole crew, this was for the wager. Mm-hmm. The whole crew was like, we were trying to scramble, like get things done. And Susan was my sound person, and it, like, through no fault of her own, it just happened. It dropped and, like, did a big whack on Lisa's roof.
Oh, no.
And Susan was, like, visibly shaken and upset. And
Susan.
I was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. And it's fine.
So,
it still works.
Man, I could tell you, 10 stories about, equipment destruction that's happened on sets, but... I think the worst one that ever happened was when we were shooting Nowhere, PA. My DP and I were basically the only two permanent crew members on that shoot, so we kind of did everything between the two of us. And he was not happy that I was very inexperienced and kind of took it to me as a friend several times. But there was one day we were shooting where he was testing out a new Steadicam that he had just gotten for free from a Chinese company, looking to get more footage of people using their Steadicam. And as he was balancing his $20,000 XCam for 2008 on this thing, on the rod, the arm actually broke off, and the camera thudded onto the ground really heavily. The LCD screen shattered, and I was kind of like, thank God I was on the other side of the park, because otherwise I would have gotten blamed for this.
Oh my God.
And he was just in a understandably really bad mood the rest of the day. Thankfully, the only thing that really got broken was the LCD screen. Everything else on the camera was perfectly fine. But, when that camera broke off of that Steadicam arm and hit the ground, it was heard round the park. And everybody was dead quiet. And they were like, shit.
I think we should do a little plug. Nowhere, PA is your first feature film?
Sure. I mean, if you want to. It's on YouTube for free.
It's on YouTube. Okay.
It was shot mostly at Williams Grove, defunct amusement park, and between Lewistown, Pennsylvania. It's okay. It's nothing great.
Yeah.
At this point, it's weird to say it's a 17-year-old movie.
I mean, life comes at you fast.
Yeah.
One of the kind of filming mishap that always sticks in my mind is the time that a drone almost fell out of the sky and almost landed in a group of Amish school children.
Oh God.
I don't know if I've told you this story or not. This was back when I was working on the Ray Gricar Missing District Attorney project for Penn Live, the lovely folks at Penn Live. And we had a freelancer who was with me doing drone shots of me driving in a red Mini Cooper, basically playing the part of Ray Gricar. Mm-hmm. And the freelance drone operator was following me through the winding woods, getting some really lovely B-roll of the red car coming through the woods. And I learned after the fact, he had just bought some like cheap batteries for his very expensive drone. Mm. And while it looked like they fit properly, they jostled loose mid-flight as I was driving past this Amish schoolhouse where all the kids were in the yard playing, and the drone just like crashed into like right outside the schoolyard. And all I could hear we had the walkie-talkie going. I was in the car. He was behind me operating the drone like from the side of the road, like quarter mile back or so. All I could hear over the phone was fuck, 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 fuck. The drone was completely totaled.
Oh no. I was hoping
Gonzo. And I was in a position I consoled the guy because like, that's rough. That is really rough.
Yeah.
But it also could have been worse. No one was injured. Mm-hmm. You know, it was just a drone. And we didn't hit the car, which lovely folks at a local auto dealership actually let us borrow the car for free. Because like, we're a newspaper. We can't really afford, lots and lots of property management and renting a car and all that for a shoot. Did not hit the car, didn't hit any children.
Yeah, didn't hit anybody. I've had a couple of shoots where, I guess it was really just the one VidJam of Horror shoot where the drone almost landed on Hope at one point for a similar reason.
Oh no.
Yeah, because so we shot it in a cornfield, and then during one of the things, I accidentally, like doing a very ambitious, very fast swing and pull up, the drone just hit a wayward stock and completely capsized, and it ended up being like a 40-minute drone hunt for me in this like 3-mile cornfield to get the drone back. And when I got it back, it was perfectly okay to the visible eye, which also you can check maps, which is the only reason I found it in a 3-mile cornfield. But then the last shot we were doing was like a pull up above Hope in the cornfield.
Yeah.
And then when we got to like a 200-foot radius, the drone started beeping saying, battery has been dislodged. We're going to land right now. And Toby and I were the only two left over there, but we had to be like so far away so we weren't in the shot.
Yep.
So we started like running and screaming, "Help! Get out of there!" And she did not hear us because the drone was loud. And luckily it landed like a foot, maybe 6 inches away from her head. And she was perfcly okay. And she was like, "What were you guys yelling at? Oh, we almost killed you with the drone."
God.
And then the other like major story I can think of is when we were doing the collective project. I was getting another pulling away of Ryan Lockman down right at the Susquehanna, and the same thing happened. It detected that it was dislodged when it was over the island between like here and the West Shore, and it was landing right then. But luckily with drones, the radio control has to operate independently of what the actual control is. So it'll still take radio signals. And I was like, your drone operator was like, fuck. And I just booked it to the East Shore as quickly as possible and was able to control crash it on the sidewalk there. And it was okay. But that came back.
If it had fallen into the Susquehanna, bye-bye drone.
Yeah, the way I look at it at this point is Droney has had a very wayward life. He has gotten me a lot of really good footage. I have been very haphazard with him to try to get the best footage. If he dies, he dies.
If he dies, he dies.
Yeah, he led a good life. He'll go to drone heaven.
You've gotten some really good shots with that drone.
Yeah.
Like I remember the cornfield one, which is Which one? Which short was that?
That was...
It was the one with the basement and all the blood, right?
You Are Safe. Yes, the murder basement,
Yeah.
which still somewhat persists to this day.
I never remember the name. I don't even remember the names of my movies, but I remember like the props and stuff that you use. And the other one that you got a really impressive drone shot was the one with Jasmine.
Oh,
where
yeah.
It is like the camera motion is just this spiral up. Like it's the actual frame is spiraling and it's going up away from her.
And there was a cloud break, like not a cloud break, but like a cloud passed over the sun at the exact moment we were shooting that too. So
Yeah.
it looks like it went black, except for her in the white dress, but really just a well-coordinated accidental cloud.
Yeah, and you got a really good shot, which I haven't fully edited the sequence yet, but for River City Stories.
I'm excited to see what that looks like on the big screen,
Yeah.
because I was casually showing a couple of people at work just the proxy of what that looked like. And, you know, you can't quite get the full grasp of it on a cell phone screen, but a lot of them were like, that's really interesting looking. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it's a shot overhead of a labyrinth, which is the path that you can walk while you're meditating, and it just the drone kind of goes up from these characters who are walking the labyrinth, and you see that really beautiful pattern.
Yeah, while we're on the subject, I can't wait to actually finally see River City Stories when you screen it. Is it March they're going to be screening it?
March 7th and March 9th at West Shore Theater in New Cumberland, Pennsylvania.
Yes. I'm going to either swap off a day for work for that or actually like just take off of work if I can, because I really want... I didn't get a chance to see it at the Fringe Festival, and there is a lot of talent in River City Stories.
Yes,
so
there is.
I'm very intrigued to see what you put together.
And then we're going to show a sneak peek of Labyrinth.
Yeah.
During this one in New Cumberland. And then we still have more to shoot. Sometime over, hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have the full feature length done.
I like that it's like an ongoing project, because it definitely... So the features that I shot, we had to do like mad dashes over 1 month to get it shot. And it was usually like in the range of 25 or 26 shooting days over 30 to somehow like cobble it together. Like Nowhere PA was actually probably like 21. And a lot of times we were actually talking with each other. We were kind of like, it would have been so much better if we could have spaced this out, so we could have like regrouped. Everybody wasn't like exhausted, so we got into a better rapport with each other and everything. So like the schedule for River City Stories is really interesting to me, because you do kind of get that, and you do get a chance to like step back and like recalibrate with people. So the long run was a good way to go, I think.
Well, and part of that was just by necessity, because both Paul and I work, day jobs. And it's just not feasible when you're working a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Especially the jobs that we're doing. Paul works with special ed students, and I run a newspaper. And
Intrepid reporter Wallace McKelvey.
I am not a reporter anymore. I'm J. Jonah Jameson, as my partner likes to say. That's who I am. I'm always demanding photos of the Batman.
Oh man, I love the mixed metaphors. That's great.
Oh wait, no, it's not Batman, is it?
Spider-Man.
It's Spider-Man. That shows you how much I know.
The man, whatever.
Anyway, I'm that character in Spider-Man. So it was kind of by necessity that we ended up shooting it the way we did, and I do think it's probably for the best, because we're getting some really good stuff, and it gives us more time to kind of work with actors and people know what we're doing. They know what we're about.
Yeah, it's good. So far, like based on the little bit of footage that I've seen of it, it looks spectacular, and I can't wait to see like a fully put together version of just the first 4 and the sneak preview of Labyrinth as well in March. So that'll be a blast.
Tell me more. You've told me a little bit about Nowhere PA, but like frame that for me. How did that come about?
So that was a screenplay I wrote. I had the idea for the screenplay of my senior year of college, because like back then digital cinema was kind of just starting out. Like we were still working on film for the most part for our senior films and stuff like that. And I worked a lot of hours at Hershey Park over 2 years and had about $5,000 saved up. So I was kind of like, okay, I guess I need to get like an Arriflex camera, which would have been like $2,400, and then find a way to scrape together film. And people had different like ideas. They were kind of like, oh, you can buy expired stock for like a little bit less if you're willing to risk the image quality. You can shoot in black and white to save money. And then luckily, one of the friends I made in film school who kind of just like was petering around Astoria, the like working in video and such, the year he graduated a year before me, and I convinced him to come down and bring his fancy digital camera and equipment and everything and shoot a movie for me, which was a
Score.
decision he promptly regretted because I did not know, despite going through film school, I didn't know anything about camera, anything about lighting, something he frequently made fun of me for all the time on set. Sometimes not always in the nicest way.
Good-naturedly? No?
Maybe. It got done, which was the...
Yeah.
But yeah, the script was, it was kind of based on my experiences at Hershey Park. We originally were going to use Hershey Park as the place, and then they would not let me shoot there, despite the fact that I had been an employee for so long. I had management people willing to help me out, and they said no to that. And then we asked Knoebels Grove at one point, too, because I figured they might be interested. And weirdly enough, they turned me down because even, like, I knew roller coaster mechanics because I'd worked on them my entire, like, teenage years. And they sent it back saying that they didn't want me shooting because they didn't think I understood how roller coaster mechanics worked based on some of the things in the screenplay. And I was like, well, that was a weird reason. But then, through sheer force of luck, I discovered that there's an abandoned amusement park in Mechanicsburg.
Yep.
And we found them at just the right time because their 88-year-old owner was on his deathbed. Nobody was really looking after the park that closely, and we were able to convince the like two people in charge of managing the park that we could shoot there for 30 days by sort of also bullshitting our insurance and stuff like that. And they didn't care at all. Like, there were an interesting story too, is like they told nobody we were shooting there, and there were two men who probably would have been homeless had they not been security guards living on the island. That the very first night we shot there, one of my actors, August, who was involved in the theater scene here in Harrisburg, had like a pride sticker on the back of his Jeep. And he was the first person to leave like late at night when we were done shooting. And a car like came up to him, passed him, pulled over like right in front of him like you see in the movies. And he was like, I thought I was going to get jumped. And,
no.
But it was just
But those are the security guards.
Yeah, we had a good talk with them after they frightened the shit out of August. Then we put them in the movie because I remember something one of my film teachers said is that if you ever encounter like a police officer who's not being cooperative or a city manager or something who's being a dick, be like, would you like to be in the movie?
Yep.
And it works, believe it or not.
Yeah. I mean, I've never had that experience. Like, I didn't go at it like, I'm going to put you in the movie to placate you. But the one vid jam I did up in Pillow in northern Dauphin County, the city council members and the mayor, well, not the mayor, but the city council members and some of the other people in the crowd shots were all the like public officials of that town. So it was the president of the historical society, the actual mayor helped out, and a couple, I think one of their council members as well, and then a couple other just kind of local, people who knock around town.
Yeah, let that be a lesson to you, kids. Placating people as you're making a movie is a very real part of the game.
Well, yeah. Well, just like working with a crew, you kind of have to navigate, different personalities and get buy-in from people to even want to do a movie. Because it's not something that the average person even thinks about.
Yeah, the second, like to that point, the second feature we did was originally supposed to take place in an Ollie's. And that's what it was like written as. And Ollie's wasn't quite what it is now. Like it was on the verge of becoming a more national chain, but they still only had about 6 stores. And we actually got it to the like CEO of Ollie's, who, to his credit, he actually read it and put it under consideration. But he ended up turning us down because, again, in the screenplay, he said that the script was horribly insulting to the employees, the people who worked at Ollie's. And particularly, he took umbrage with one of the scenes in the movie is one of the characters, who is generally a dirty person, is forced to wash his hands at the intervention of everyone else in the store. And washing his hands ends up killing him because he has an acute allergic reaction to lye. And for whatever reason, that really insulted the CEO of Ollie's, that one of his employees would die from washing their hands.
Oh, I mean, of all the reasons you could give, like, that's a pretty sweet one.
I thought it was
like, I don't want to insult my employees by making light of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I, I can understand that.
Yeah, to his credit though, he read the script. Like it kind of sucked, but
Yeah.
we found another story to shoot in because that's kind of like the other big. I think the biggest component of filmmaking is just creative problem solving and resiliency.
Yep.
Because like roadblocks are going to come up, and it's like, can I pivot to here while still getting the same message across?
Yeah. Well, and so the abandoned park that you shot in, that was Williams Grove, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, your timing was impeccable
Oh,
because I love abandoned places, and so I'm like part of a couple groups of urban explorers that go into abandoned places. I haven't done it myself in years. I used to do it in when I lived in New Jersey. But apparently they're very like tight, locked down now
Yes.
at Williams Grove.
I would not recommend trying to go dashing in there because there have been a couple of like web series, like Abandoned PA did a pretty like big 40-minute spread on Williams Grove like 10 years ago, and a couple of my witnesses, like because we have witnesses for the Pennsylvania lottery, so I talk to a lot of older Pennsylvanians every day, and two of them actually live right by Williams Grove, and they're fascinated that I actually shot a movie there because they're like, yes, the owner Morgan Hughes was his name. His daughter owns the establishment now, and she is very mean, from what they say, and very, but also on to be sympathetic to her. You probably have a lot of shitty
I have a
kids.
feeling that she deals with a lot of people trying to break in.
Yeah, like the last time I drove past
Yeah.
there casually, there's a sign out there saying, "This is not an abandoned amusement park. Somebody lives here. How would you like it if somebody tried to burst into your house all the time?" And I can buy that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like when we were shooting there too, there's not as much left there as when we were shooting either. The roller coaster is still standing, but like the water slide that we shot some stuff at is gone. There was a church that they converted into a laser tag place that's gone, and there was a haunted house facility that all the wood was rotting when we shot in there, so it was not long for this world. But like in the back of the haunted house, we used to find all sorts of beer and condoms back there because like local Mechanicsburg kids clearly were breaking in here to drink and have sex with each other.
Oh
So-
wow. Yeah.
So, and then Morgan Hughes died 4 days after we finished shooting the movie. So we dedicated it to his honor, even though the administrator said that there was a chance he didn't realize a movie was being actually shot there because he was kind of out of it towards the end.
Aw.
But he's an interesting guy if you ever want to look him up.
Yeah.
He made a pretty good fortune actually because he was one of the first importers of German-based roller coaster technology into the United States. Like before then, people just would build their own roller coasters willy-nilly, and there were a couple of upstart German companies that were starting these metal roller coasters, which were the ones that he has a wooden one there, but like he started selling them to other companies. So
That's really cool.
yeah,
And it kind of speaks to the way that the film can be a time capsule, because you're capturing these places
Oh,
and these
yeah.
people in a specific moment in time in their lives. And like Williams Grove, I in just the roughly 10 years that I've lived in middle of Pennsylvania, I've seen that place change, and like you said, a lot of the rides are gone now,
yeah.
and the ones that are still there are degrading. So it's not the same Williams Grove that you shot in. And like one of the vid jams that I did, Heard, with Paul Hood,
Mhm.
we shot it at the Broad Street Market in
really?
in Midtown Harrisburg, and we shot it in the part of the market that burned down last year.
Mhm.
So we have this long extended scene in a building that no longer exists.
It's like, to my knowledge, I can't think of anybody else who shot a movie in there too. So
Yeah.
you have the time capsule that of
Yeah.
what it looked like before then. When it's hopefully rebuilt, people will look back on it, I'm sure.
I'm sure other people have shot something in there, but I can't think of any short films that ever shot in there.
I'm trying to think if I've shot anything else in a place that doesn't exist anymore, because that's an interesting thought.
The same thing applies for people too, because like
Oh, yeah.
you're capturing, with my films, I'm friends with basically everyone that I shoot with. You're capturing your friends in a specific moment in time. I think of one of the vid jams we shot like during COVID, Souls at Night, was just our little pod talking on a porch, and I basically just filmed a conversation. There was a loose script to it, We had big themes that we were capturing, but more or less it was just the group of us just chatting.
And Jempolny too. I always remember that's in there.
Yeah.
I was thinking like what you were talking about with people as like snapshots of them, and there's at least one actor I can think of in Pretendagers who died a couple of years later, who he's still like his Facebook account still exists too, so it's kind of like a ghost account on there. But his name was Dave Colstock. He was a very sweet guy that actually responded to just a Craigslist ad to play a small part in one scene as a paramedic. He had like 10 lines, but he was very good. He had a lot of fun with everybody. And then between when we finished shooting the movie and like the 2.5 years it took to edit it, he actually got involved in a very bad car accident and like didn't know where he was some of the time. But I still remember he came out to the premiere like in his best suit and he wore a fedora and he had a great time seeing the movie and just going to the bar with us afterwards. And then 2 years later, I saw somebody post on his Facebook that he had passed away from the brain damage he had taken. And I always think about that, like whenever I watch the movie, I'm like, this is because his daughter actually asked for his footage from that movie to show at his funeral, and I'm like, yeah, I'll give it to you. And yeah, so there's people as snapshots as well.
Yeah, you're trapped forever in amber in your films. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit of a morbid thought, I guess, but I think it's actually kind of a joyous thought on some level.
Yeah, it's its own form of immortality. You live on forever until the last person sees it.
Yeah, until there was a quote from Sandman I always think of too, like you're never dead until the last person who knows that you were alive died.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's also in the Pixar movie Coco. I'm pretty sure
Yes.
it's like an ancient idea that goes back to some culture long ago.
Oh, Coco makes me cry like a baby whenever I watch that.
Yes. I have only seen it once, but I love that movie.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It has more of a context with me because it's a movie also I used to watch with my ex's kids, so it's something that like has a different second set of meanings to me. But I remember I was reading a list of the best fictional songs in movies, and I forget if Coco was number 1, 2, or 3, because 1, 2, and 3 were either That Thing You Do, Scotty Doesn't Know, or Remember Me. And one of the observations they made about Remember Me, which I didn't even notice in the movie, is that Remember Me actually works on any level you want it to be. Like early in the movie, it's a joyous, giant, big band piece that Dela Cruz is singing in front of people in a film strip. It's a somber lullaby in its most effective form, but they play it in a lot of different capacities and a lot of different tones, and it works for every single one of them. So
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting observation about that song.
I'm itching to rewatch that now.
Oh, it is probably... Pixar puts out a lot of good movies, and Coco was probably the best of them for a while, although I haven't seen a lot of the more recent ones.
It was the best of the like recent batch, I think. I still have a fondness for some of the older ones, like the original Toy Story.
Mm-hmm.
I almost said Star Wars.
I
That
know.
was bad. The original Toy Story. Maybe because there have been so many sequels.
Yeah.
And I love WALL-E, and I love Monsters,
You are
Inc.
WALL-E.
I am WALL-E, yeah.
Yeah, but those are all good movies. We need to have more good movies in the world.
We need more good movies in the world, yes.
Yeah, that's why
Co-signed.
I haven't been watching a lot of movies lately, but I think I've mentioned to you Inside Number 9 as being a TV show that I find fascinating. And I think like filmmakers out there would find it fascinating as well. Did I explain what the premise of the show is?
No, go for it.
So what it is it is a short film, every single episode. It's British, so there are 6 episodes per season, but they did 9 seasons of the show.
Wow.
So it ran on for a very long time. The only common thread between every episode is that Reese Pearsmith and Stephen Pemberton are the writers, sometimes directors, and usually the stars of every episode. It all takes place in a number 9. Like one is an apartment number 9, for instance. Another is train car number 9. Another is it takes place in a game of sardines in a dresser, which happened to be dresser number 9, commissioned by a person. And they're all a little bit black humor, but they all try to do something filmically very different for every single one of them. Like one of my favorite episodes takes place all on just a CCTV feed. So you have like 8 different screens on one screen that you just are watching the entire time. And it'll dial into one to like make it more of a close-up at some points, but it tells an entire story, which is actually kind of a sinister story, at a crisis management hotline in England told through the vantage point of 8 CCTV cameras, which is really interesting. And then there is another one which broke my heart called The 12 Days of Christine that is about a woman who's going through the 12 most consequential days of her life as she walks from room to room in her apartment. And everyone is usually tied to either a holiday or a big part of her life. And it is like some of the best filmmaking I've ever seen.
I need to check that out. Where is that streaming?
It's streaming. You can see the first season on Prime for free. The rest is on BritBox that you have to subscribe to.
Okay.
But highly recommended because they do try to do a different like film technique every single episode, which I really appreciate. I'm trying to think of some other interesting ones that they did. There's one. The second episode is a humorous silent movie almost with no dialogue about two people trying to rob a rich man's house, which is absolutely hysterical. Yeah.
So Inside Number 9.
Yeah.
I like it. It reminds me a little bit of the show Documentary Now.
Yeah,
have you seen
it is
that?
a little bit, yeah.
Where every episode is a send up of a famous documentary or a documentary style.
I only ever watched the first episode of that, which was the Grey Gardens episode, because
the Grey Gardens episode is really funny.
It's too spot on. Like, an interesting confession of mine, I do not find Fred Armisen funny at all. Like, I personally think he's always over the top and just, like, kind of annoys me. But on the other hand, I love Bill Hader for the opposite reason, because I feel like he's very subtle and, like, do you know what his background was in Hollywood before he became an actor?
No.
He was a production assistant. That's where he started out in Hollywood. Which is why Barry became, like, his sort of tour de force by the end, where he was directing episodes, because he learned the technical side of filmmaking and then became an SNL cast member. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Documentary Now was another, and I know that there are documentaries there I'm going to absolutely love. I just kind of forgot it existed until you said something.
Well, we're in this, like, what they call peak TV time, where there's just so much TV out there because every streaming service has to create its own stuff. We went through this period where just like people were throwing money at all sorts of different projects, and there's too much for anyone to possibly consume.
The Ringer actually did a really good article about this phenomenon sort of a couple of weeks ago, because like Severance finally came back after 3 years of being off the air, and they were mentioning it's like, what the hell happened? We used to get TV like once a year. You'd get all your show. And so, like, what changed in the dynamics behind TV making? And they were pointing out it became more of a tech startup than an actual media company.
Yeah.
And so the reason that, like, there's 3 years between seasons of Severance, or, like, 2 years between House of the Dragon seasons, is they need to keep you subscribing. So they only release stuff in batches because their past catalog is not enough to keep you paying $10.99 a month plus ads.
Yeah. Yep. And I suspect we're on the other side of that now, because what we're seeing... We had this proliferation of streaming services, and now the herd is going to gradually get cold.
Yeah.
And there'll be far fewer of them.
HBO and Disney are already relicensing some of their wares back to Netflix, which was the original, like, they wanted to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Although there is a plus side to, like, the longer production sides, too, because Ben Stiller was interviewed in part of this article, and he was saying one of the plus sides to having, like, a longer production time is you get to really write your stuff out, kind of like you were saying with River City Stories. And he said the production details are a lot better, because he said he worked on TV shows where, like, they would just grab a cabinet from Goodwill and stick it in there so it would look like an apartment. But with Severance, they can actually, like, get a carpenter to build stuff for them. They can actually, like, fill out real, like, letters and scenes where somebody's supposed to be looking at a letter. And they can spend a lot of time on production design. It's up to you whether or not that actually increases the experience, but it's still interesting, I think.
Yeah, I saw the first. It's funny. I saw most of the first season of that show, and then Apple TV, which is not my favorite platform. I let it lapse, and then I've gone literally the intervening however many years without finishing the first season.
Yeah, the end, the last episode is a real, like, gut shot episode too.
Yeah,
and ends on quite the cliffhanger, which I think is why people were angry that it was 3 years. But there are shows out there that will do, like The Bear, for instance. Like Clockwork releases their entire season in same week of July every single year.
Yeah,
and they do a very high quality show too, in my opinion.
Well, and for them, what I imagine is they have to keep their actors in blocks.
Yeah.
Whereas Well, the other aspect is Severance has a couple really big name stars, so they probably have to navigate those people's schedules too.
I was actually just reading about I was seeing if there was going to be a party down season 4 recently, because season 3, which took 13 years to make. Speaking of long production times, it ends on quite the cliffhanger too, which is supposed to set up a 4th season, like not ambiguously, like it's clearly supposed to be this is what we're going to do next season. And I was reading on Reddit, like, is there any word on it? Because it's been 2 years since it concluded. And the response was kind of like, it's really difficult to get all of those people in the same room. Like, Adam Scott's doing Severance. Jane Lynch is on Only Murders in the Building. Lizzie Kaplan has all of her stuff, too. And there's just, like, way too many people that are involved with moving people. Like, that was how the, like, train... I don't know if I would call it a train wreck, but, like, the very lackluster season 4 of Arrested Development happened. Is because like everybody was too busy after years it was off, so they had to like do individual episodes.
That's right, and they kind of piecemealed it together with whoever was available at specific times.
Yeah,
that's why there's a bunch of there's never a scene in that last season where everyone's on screen at the same time.
Yeah, it's sort of like I remember I was really jazzed when that was coming out. In fact, my roommate and I, because we were in LA when it came out, and everybody was talking about it. And we actually, we blocked out our Sunday to watch, the entire show. We were just going to try to binge as much as possible. And by season 4, we were kind of like, yeah, we're going to take a break. And then never went back and finished it for that reason. So
yeah,
sometimes it's, I think, important just to, accept that you had your time and maybe don't go back to something after so many years.
It's hard to tell because we also got that last season of David Lynch's Twin Peaks.
Oh,
I'm really glad we have that last season.
I've never watched Twin Peaks, unfortunately, but I've heard that the last season that was really good.
And I'm not a huge Twin Peaks fan, but I'm glad that we have it because it gave him this big canvas to operate on. So it's hard to tell what is a good use of time and what is not.
Yeah.
We all just kind of roll the dice and see what happens.
I mean, I guess a good example of that, too, is Top Gun Maverick, because when that was coming out, I was kind of like, who the fuck was asking for a Top Gun sequel 30 years later? And then low-key became one of the best movies released that year. And I was like...
True confession, I've never seen it.
Oh,
I
think you
I'm
will
not
enjoy
a
it.
huge fan of the original Top Gun. I saw it when I was a kid.
Me neither, and that's why I was so ho-hum on this. I was like, I guess people like the shirtless homoerotic volleyball scene, but
is there more homoerotic volleyball scenes in the new one?
So they do homoerotic football instead.
Oh,
with a
okay.
twist. And there is a woman who is a navigator as well, or a pilot as well. So it's not fully homoerotic, just mostly homoerotic. But they play something called what is it called? Dogfight football, where both teams have a ball and both teams are playing offense and defense simultaneously. And it's an intriguing concept for football, but it drove me crazy watching them play it. But everything about Maverick just worked in a weird, I won't spoiler it for you or anything like that, but it's a movie that knew exactly what it was supposed to be. And it was supposed to be Tom Cruise passing off himself to the next generation of big stars, but also still being in their company at the same time. It hit all the right notes. It was just well done. It had spectacular practical effects. It's hard to describe without actually watching it, but I think you would enjoy it.
It's on my list. I'll see it eventually.
It's somebody on The Ringer referred to it as the ultimate dad movie.
Yeah.
The pinnacle of dad cinema.
Yeah, I feel that way about A Complete Unknown, which it's funny. For various reasons, I have talked about this movie in 2 of the podcasts already with 2 different people.
So did you like A Complete Unknown?
I really did. That is, in my mind, the dad movie of 2024.
Yeah. You've seen the Todd Haynes version of the...
Yeah,
Dylan
I
Maverick.
prefer I'm Not There, the Tom Haynes version.
Me too. I mean, I haven't seen A Complete Unknown yet, but...
But A Complete Unknown is very good, and Timothée Chalamet is really great. And so is Monica Barbaro, I think is her name, who plays Joan Baez. And Ed Norton is also really great in it as Pete Seeger.
Yeah.
It's got just a great cast, great music, and it's one of those movies that, It's not really profound. It doesn't. I did not feel any strong emotions watching it, but it's just an easy breezy sit that has a couple grace notes in it and some interesting ideas and just really well executed popcorn movie.
I'll have to see it then.
Yeah.
Because the Todd Haynes I'm Not There movie, I caught it on demand in like 2010 when I was just like really getting into Bob Dylan. And I had my laptop with me, and I was really happy I had my laptop with me because you really need Wikipedia to understand on a first viewing a lot of the stuff that they were showing in I'm Not There. Because I was not familiar with every era of Bob Dylan's music, and it was a very useful guide, but also you shouldn't need Wikipedia to watch and enjoy a movie.
I mean, I just love the idea of Todd Haynes recruiting a whole bunch of people to play different aspects of Bob Dylan's character. That was such a genius idea.
Yeah.
And Todd Haynes did that before. His very first feature-length film, which is not available anywhere, is a recounting of the story of the Carpenters. It's a biopic about Karen Carpenter, but all of the characters are Barbie dolls.
And this isn't available anywhere
because of the music rights. It wasn't an authorized, biography, and he used actual Carpenter's music in it. So, yeah, it's not available anywhere, from what I can tell. I would love to see it. I have not seen it, but it is such a genius idea.
I would bet you that there is a version out there in the world that you could.
It's probably on a torrent or something, but I feel like I'm too old for torrents.
Although we might have to go back to them with all these streaming services.
Yeah.
But see, that's an inventive. I like the inventive biopics like that. Like I'm Not There also had an incredibly kick-ass cover soundtrack of so many different amazing artists covering Dylan songs. Like some of them were kind of hit or miss, but like in particular, like the Going to Acapulco version, where they used Calexico as the band, but then Jim James as the singer, was it got me into listening to My Morning Jacket, and as I was listening to My Morning Jacket, I was like, his voice is better suited for sort of like a dusty old Western country band than it is for like this sort of folky alternative rock band.
Yeah.
It sort of spoiled me. And then I bought Calexico's records, and I was like, they're okay, but they need a better frontman.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that movie quite. I'm trying to think of other good biopics out there, because a lot of them tend to be very cookie cutter.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I'm still somewhat disappointed that Nolan's Academy Awards have come from a, not exactly cookie cutter, but a somewhat more cookie cutter biopic he did, rather than some of the more interesting cinema he's put out there.
Yeah, I liked Oppenheimer, but I didn't quite understand why it was so beloved. For my money, it was too damn long.
Yeah, 3.5 hours was too much.
It dragged significantly, and it didn't really tell you. I felt like it didn't tell me anything more. It just gave me more things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what wins Academy Awards, and I think he had to just check that box off. But, for my money, The Prestige is a significantly better movie in every way, shape, and form. And actually, I know that we have mixed feelings on Interstellar, but it's funny because my new coworker, who's an Indian gentleman who has a lot of strong opinions on a number of things, absolutely loves Interstellar, and specifically loves the soundtrack and the direction that Nolan gave to make the soundtrack. And so he and I have talked a lot about Interstellar on a lot of levels, but he's never seen The Prestige. So I'm like, you should check out The Prestige. It's a better. Yeah. It is probably the best Nolan movie. Has the best David Bowie performance ever.
I still personally, I think my preference is still Memento.
Memento is an excellent
because
movie.
I remember Memento was the one among the first movies that I saw when I was a kid, where I was like, oh, this was directed. A director made this film.
Oh yeah.
And I remember there were special features on the DVD that I got from Blockbuster, and I just devoured them when I rented that movie.
Did you watch the in chronological order version of the movie?
Yep.
It's very lackluster, isn't it?
The chronological version, it definitely is. It loses something. Yeah.
That's a bit of a lost art these days, our DVD menus, because I remember the special edition of Memento I had, to access the special features, you actually had to take, like, psych tests or click on certain things, and it made, like, I had to look up on the internet, like, watch movie in chronological order, you have to select A, B, C, and A again to get there. Like, I kind of miss those but also, because there's a million thoughts running through my head whenever we talk cinema. Kevin Smith actually had a really insightful thing to say about like the careers specifically, because he knew Richard Kelly, the Donnie Darko guy, whose career absolutely went nowhere after.
He kind of disappeared after Southland Tales.
Yeah, he wrote, or I think he wrote The Box or something like that.
That's right.
So he had one more movie. But like Kevin Smith, by the way, like by his own admission, he's not the greatest filmmaker in the world. He considers himself more of a personality. And he has a lot of very interesting stories from intersecting with so many people in Hollywood. And he said he knew both Nolan and Richard Kelly around 2000 when Donnie Darko had come out, Memento had come out. And he said that Nolan got a lot of tutelage and a lot of guidance from the Warner Brothers studio system, where they really tried to develop him as a director instead of just sticking him on his next project. And he said Richard Kelly kind of got hung out to dry, and they just like threw him. They're like, oh yeah, go do your Southland Tales, but then didn't try to like develop him as a director at all. And that's why he fizzled out. And I thought that was an interesting, like, you know, directors are like football players. They need to be developed like anyone else.
Yeah. Well, and making a movie is really hard. If you succeed in making even one movie, like that it's a miracle. Having a sustained career is the next level of a miracle. So like Richard E. Kelly, I don't love his movies, but props to him for making several very much his movie. Like Donnie Darko, I can't imagine anyone else making that movie. Same thing with Southland Tales, which is freaking bonkers, that movie.
I've never seen it, and I heard it got booed at Cannes. I know.
Yeah, but it's a weird movie. I'd recommend it. I mean, I have so many recommendations for you.
There's not enough hours in the day.
It's not a top level, not a top tier recommendation, but if you want a gonzo movie with a stacked cast, like it's got everyone in this movie. That is weird and like dystopian. And
is it sort of like River City Stories and is like vignette-esque, or is it like more of a just normal narrative?
I mean, I guess you could say that. The way that River City Stories is structured is not at all like Southland Tales. But Southland Tales, it's doing the kind of the intersecting narratives and the characters kind of looping past each other. That was like the bread and butter of Paul Thomas Anderson during that era.
Oh yeah, Magnolia is probably a very similar movie to that. Yeah, Paul Thomas Anderson, like, he had a movie that just came out recently that I didn't watch. Did he, or does he have
the other year he had the one with Bradley Cooper.
Licorice Pizza.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that.
I was blanking on the name of it.
I didn't realize, by the way, that the lead in that was Philip Seymour Hoffman's son until very recently.
Yeah, plus Haim.
Oh, yeah. Like Alana Haim.
Yeah.
Which I thought that... So it's interesting, because I liked Licorice Pizza, although I've never watched it again. But it felt very much like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where there wasn't really an overarching plot to it, but it was still just an enjoyable time to spend in this world with these characters. And Bradley Cooper going like full Howard Hughes.
Yeah. Well, and there's been a bunch of movies by auteur directors recently who are just kind of like looking backward at their lives with nostalgia. You know, you had Scorsese do it with The Irishman. You had Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Tarantino, which is very much a love letter to his youth. And Paul Thomas Anderson, same deal with Licorice Pizza. That's basically just his teenage years living in the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah.
You know, all these like aging directors are looking back at their lives.
Yeah.
To greater and lesser degrees of success, I would say.
And then there's Francis Ford Coppola, which I have not seen.
Finally getting to do his big epic movie he's been working on for 35 years.
I've heard it's a mess, and I really want to see
it.
I
loved it. I loved it. I mean, it's not a masterpiece, but it is really fun. I watched it with Josh, my partner, alone. Like, we had a private screening watching that movie, no one else in the theater, and we had a blast. We just let loose, like, laughing and cackling, and Aubrey Plaza is a freaking hoot in Megalopolis.
Yeah, Aubrey Plaza is somebody else I've like, her post Parks and Rec career when she was like a hot property. She could have kind of just done any like set of movies she wanted to become a big star, but instead she and her now unfortunately deceased husband, like, she kind of just did a lot of interesting indie movies that like Life After Beth or Ingrid Goes West, or just like, she kind of just did what she wanted to do, which I appreciated.
Well, she's been trying to get John Waters to do one last movie.
I've heard, yeah.
And apparently they ran into some finance issues. They had financing, and then the financing disappeared. I hope that they're able to make it, because John Waters deserves another movie.
John Waters deserves as many movies as he wants.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's another one. I total respect for John Waters, like, doing his own thing, being a, like, very distinct voice in the world. We need him to do more films.
Yeah.
Damn it.
The Simpsons writer, like, another interesting source of, like, Hollywood stories are listening to Simpsons commentaries, and he had one of the best episodes of The Simpsons.
I love his episode of The Simpsons.
They said they encountered a shit ton of, like, interference from the network over that episode in particular, because, like, making an episode about I don't want to say he's not completely stereotypical, but a mostly non-stereotypical gay man for the biggest animated sitcom on the air.
He is the gayest man that was acceptable in primetime in the 90s, probably.
But they said what they ended up doing was, despite the censor, like, they kind of just, like, stuck it to them. They were like, we're going to make this episode. If they really want to bury it, let them bury it. And you know what happened? By the time the episode was set to air, there was a new president of Fox who didn't realize what they were doing, didn't care, and just said the episode was good to air.
Yeah.
And so,
like, Josh and I still quote that lines from that episode back and forth, like, zap. I love that.
There's so many. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, John, is this your family? Waylon, don't do this now. Or yeah, like, ooh, a TV guide owned by Jackie O. Yeah, she thought Mindy lived with Mark. That was a great episode.
Yeah.
I do want to, like, circling back to Francis Ford Coppola too, like, something I have been digesting recently is they've done a number of documentaries on Saturday Night Live because they're having their 50th anniversary. And apparently, like, one of the episodes of the documentary series was about the season where Lorne Michaels came back after a few years away from the show. And the show, like, I kind of had forgotten this happened, but, like, if it hadn't been for Eddie Murphy, the show would have died when Lorne Michaels was gone. And he came back, and he had, like, the most batshit crazy cast ever. Like, Anthony Michael Hall and Robert Downey Jr. were both cast members, for instance. And season 11, he just, like, kind of threw a lot of weird stuff at the wall to try to revive the show. And I'd never seen this episode. I didn't know this existed. One of the episodes where Norm from Cheers was the host, they invited Francis Ford Coppola to be the guest director for the episode, playing himself. And he very much plays himself as a joke, where he's trying to infuse, like, Vietnam-style horror into SNL sketches. And he has a very visible character where he's on, like, the chair that's going around. He's yelling into the microphone. It is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Okay, I need to see this episode. I'll be honest, like, SNL is not my bag. For whatever reason, I very seldom find it funny.
You know what's funny, though? Like, I don't watch SNL regularly, and I haven't in years anyway. But, like, the sketches that they were showing in a lot of these shows, I either hadn't seen them or had forgotten about them. And I'm like, and I know they're just showing their greatest hits, but I'm like, this is really funny. I love this. Like, Eddie Murphy doing James Brown's hot tub concert. Like, yeah, I guess you have to see it. But,
you had to be there.
Yeah. But it's also interesting to hear, like, The Lonely Island had an interesting, like, segment in the music episode where they were kind of the same thing. They were just, like, 3 kids in 2005 who were around New York City just making comedic shorts with their mini DV camera and somehow ended up on Saturday Night Live, which I was like, that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to, like, we're in this interesting time for film because it is simultaneously easier than ever to make a film, but there's also so much bad stuff out there.
Yeah, there's a sea of shit.
Yeah.
Some of which is my shit. So, yeah, when we were talking about independent filmmaking, I've said this a couple of times. I feel like we missed it by a couple of years. Like, Nowhere PA came out in 2008, and I had read, like, this was when still, like, the 94, like, Sundance Festival that discovered Reservoir Dogs, that discovered Clerks, Sex, Lies, and the Videotape were all fresh in my mind, and that was only, like, 14 years prior. So I was reading all these accounts, and I'm like, yes, we're going to submit to Sundance, we're going to get seen, and then hopefully go from there. And guess what didn't happen? Because at that point, people were already like shooting so many movies, and I think the best time to be an independent filmmaker would have been 1993 to maybe 1997, because that's when like all the fresh independent talent, like Quentin Tarantino, Steven Soderbergh, Darren Aronofsky was a different year in Sundance. Like, that's when they all got discovered, and that's when you actually could get discovered making independent films. And now the film festival circuit is a giant like conglomerate of people trying to get as much money from you as possible. Like, honestly, your film festival budget for your movie is probably a lot larger than your actual production budget now, which is a sad commentary on everything.
Well, that, and as much money as some people spend trying to get on these film festivals, very few people are getting discovered that way.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that that's the best way if you're trying to get discovered. There is, that said, like, I went to Center Film Festival this fall in November, and I had a blast. Mm-hmm. Like, I got to meet filmmakers from like all over the world. Like, there's a couple from France. There's a couple from Egypt that I met that were really fun. And there's a real sense of community there. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to poo-poo film festivals. But, But there are a lot of them that really seem like kind of scammy.
What you just described is like the actual value of a film festival. Like, getting out there, meeting new people, having other people see your work, and sometimes getting critique from your work, depending on how much you really want to trust a somewhat competing filmmaker who might want to shit on a movie.
Or like just letting it go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, you run into a ton of, like, and this is not unique to film, it's all art, you run into super pretentious types.
Yeah.
But, you also just, like, it's kind of like you said, just making and building a community. The concept of getting discovered through a film festival is pretty much non-existent, I think, at this point, unfortunately.
But I do want to push back on you, like, I don't think there's never a ideal time to do anything. I think if you push hard enough and you keep working, and if you do it because you love it.
Oh yeah.
Like, making movies is really hard. If you don't love it, you shouldn't do it, because no one would voluntarily put themselves through some of the crazy that we put ourselves through.
Yeah.
But if you love it and you keep working on it, eventually someone will find your movies and see value in them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think about the Joan Micklin Silver, who I mentioned on your podcast like a year ago.
Remind me who this
is. She is the Jewish female director of Hester Street.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, she made a bunch of super low budget movies because she was really struggling. She had written several screenplays. I think one of them got produced, but it was a bad experience, and despite being talented, she could never break into Hollywood. So she just decided to self-fund, and partnering with her husband, she made this black and white period piece about Jewish immigrants in the 1890s with a cast predominantly unknown, like Jewish actors from the theater, and Carol Kane, who was somewhat known, but not really.
Oh, love me some Carol Kane.
I love Carol Kane. She's great in a movie that came out last year called Between the Temples. But she made this really wonderful film that ended up getting nominated for an Oscar for Carol Kane in a dramatic role, not what she's known for.
I didn't know she was nominated for an Oscar.
She was nominated for an Oscar for this really tiny independent film in 1979. And anyway, I look at stories like that, and it's possible to make good art.
Oh yeah.
even if it's not recognized when it's released.
But yeah, so that's the whole idea. Like, I think maybe I maybe misspoke when I was talking about that. Like, the value of doing art is the inherent value of doing art. Like, you're
Yeah.
just doing something. I'm speaking more like for people who want to like be a big director and be like the next Quentin Tarantino. And I'm kind of like, probably not going to
Well,
happen.
how
but-
many folks do we know who've had that aspiration and they burn themselves out because
Tons.
they're not, like, I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong reason to do anything, but if you do it because you want fame and fortune, well, the vast majority of people don't make any money doing this.
No.
And the vast majority of them are never famous. So if you're not having fun doing it, you're not going to suddenly...
I've seen it in some of the stand-up scenes too, where people, their desire to be a professional anything in art and their incredibly competitive nature, they just don't have any friends. Like, they burn through everybody and they just, are not endearing themselves. In fact, one of my friends who actually came to my birthday last Saturday, I was talking with him about stuff, and he's a fairly quiet person, and I was kind of like, I didn't know you liked me. And he's like, there are so many people constantly giving me shit around the comedy scene, and you never give me shit. So I like you.
Aw.
And I was like, that is strangely the nicest thing anybody could say about me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You never know where people are coming from, but like, life is too damn short to be an asshole.
Yeah. Not to say I'm not an asshole to some people, because I definitely am, but I feel like the people I'm an asshole to are people that I have allowed way too many breaks for and continue to just be assholes in return. So it takes a lot to be dead to me, but when you're dead to me, you're dead.
Really dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't. I've gotten to the point where, like, if I don't like you, I just don't talk to you. I don't talk about you, and I don't talk to you.
I've thought about it a lot because I think a lot about the difference in approaches for you and I with our social circles. And you've said a number of times, like, you're very guarded about letting people into your social circle, which might be smarter because I'm always kind of like, everybody, losers, get in here, let's party. And then it turns out some of those people are not good people, and they drain all of my mental energy to the point where I just hate them and probably shouldn't have let them into my circle in the first place. So I feel like maybe a middle path is probably best, but
Yeah, I think so. And I've gotten a lot more open through the years. I mean, some of that guardedness has a lot to do with my childhood, which we don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
we'll do that on depression vacation. Which is not video, so you can't see it when Wallace cries talking about this.
But I don't know. I like the crew that I've kind of built around me, especially, the folks that I collaborate with regularly. Like, we have just like, I mentioned this last week with Lisa when she was on the podcast. If you build up your crew, there are conversations that once you've worked with somebody X number of times, you no longer have to have those conversations.
Yeah.
You get to have new conversations. You get to go further and do different things with them. And I like the vibe, especially on the River City Stories set. The kind of vibe that Paul and I have intentionally tried to foster, where it's just, we deal with some heavy stuff, but we create a warm and like comfortable environment where people can deal with some heavy stuff and know that they're safe and they're not going to be subjected to ridicule.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, being ridiculed over being like open and vulnerable is kind of like the worst thing you can possibly do to somebody. And I do
especially in the arts. Like, you criticize somebody the wrong way, or you create an environment where someone doesn't feel safe. Immediately, like, there's nothing good that you can get from that person.
No.
There's nothing good that can come from that environment. I believe that in my soul. And while what we do can sometimes be difficult, it doesn't by definition have to be difficult. You don't have to make it difficult in order for it to be good art.
Yeah.
And I see this among some folks that they operate under the misapprehension that they have to suffer for their art.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
No. So
Also, Nora Ephron, one of my role models in some sense. She was a comedic writer and a filmmaker, and she wrote books and essays and all sorts of
The
things.
queen of the rom-com.
The queen of the rom-com. Nora Ephron had this saying that she got from her mother, everything is content. Meaning that like anything that happens to you, you can adapt it into your work. You know, whether that's writing an essay, whether it's telling jokes in a stand-up comedy, whether it's making a movie out of it, everything that happens to you is content. But if nothing happens to you, your well starts to run dry.
Yeah.
You don't have things that you can pull from. So if you sequester yourself and you don't expose yourself to new experiences, you're not going to be able to tell interesting stories.
One of the guys who actually was one of my really good friends and was in my main student film, Mike Notarelli, who is also a good friend of like my other friends from this area, he is currently the head writer on The Cleaning Lady, but he did a stint as a writer in WWE because he was a huge fan of wrestling, and I actually would see him like pop up in behind the scenes segments on WWE all the time. He would just be like random person interviewing Triple H before he goes to the stage with no audio, and so he did spend some time writing in the WWE between going through Hollywood shows. So
that's cool.
And is now a successful writer on a major TV show.
See, there's no one path to fame.
No, it's all content.
It's everything is content.
That's the name of this
The
episode.
very wise Nora Ephron. Well, as y'all can tell, we can talk all night, but I think we've hit a good place.
Save it for the next episode.
Yeah, you'll be on more episodes, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, Josh and I have to talk Hellraiser movies.
You do, yes.
Man, you want to see a 2-hour conversation? Let me talk to you about all the explicit sexual S&M imagery in the Hellraiser movies, interspersed with personal morality.
Oh my goodness, I can't wait.
But yeah, thank you for having me, Wallace.
Thank you for joining me, always. Is there anything that you want to sell or tease the audience?
Yeah, we're like Wallace and I are putting together the VidJam successor at this point, which is not quite gotten off of its feet yet, but it is Cinespark.
Cinespark.
Yeah, and we will be doing new things, more competitions, more varied competitions too. I love VidJam, but we kind of got in the rut of just doing the same thing the last couple of years. So, you know, hopefully we see you all making movies, because as we were talking about, the art of making art is the real value of art.
Exactly. Well, and VidJam was how I first started making movies. Like doing those 48-hour film competitions.
Yeah, and you were making incredibly high-quality movies pretty quick. Like, it didn't take you very long to adjust to the curve of making your own films,
well,
too.
thank you.
Yeah, because the first one you did was just, not to get into another conversation, but that was the one you did with Jimmy, I remember, Time After Time.
Yeah, Carl, time and again.
Time and again.
It's following a janitor who's like plunging toilets all through this apartment complex.
And then Pillow, and then the third VidJam movie you did was that heartbreaking Where the Sun Don't Ever Shine.
Yeah.
So like there was a very good curve going on there.
Yeah. Well, I'm eager to see the journey that Cinespark takes. I mean, it's the same competition, the same principles, but we've got new energy and new people involved and doing
new points
big
of
things.
view.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on, Wallace.
Thank you for being here, friend. And everyone out there, be kind to each other. Take care.
Yeah, be kind.
And kind.